Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the SolarWinds MSP Hero Series, specifically targeting security and how MSPs like you are dealing with some of the security issues out there, educating their customers, talking about that with their customers and how they're integrating that into their business. We have a great hour for you today, so I'm really excited to have the group of MSPs that we have to talk to you about what they're doing. My name is Kelly O'Bright, so I'm with SolarWinds. I'm a community manager here and have been around since the Hound Dog days, so that's taken us through a few brand changes, but same company, same great solution, and same support of you guys in terms of the community and the things that we do to try to educate you on how to be better MSPs. I've been around for over 20 years in the IT channel throughout the world in USA, UK, EMEA, and APAC. And I currently sit as the Vice Chair of CompTIA MSP Community, which if you're not familiar with CompTIA and the MSP community, I suggest you take a peek at it. It's a great place to get good research, to understand what's happening in our industry, and to connect with other MSPs like yourself. So I promised the guys that I wouldn't spend a whole bunch of time talking about myself, so I'm going to go right off there. Who is SolarWinds MSP? You guys are all familiar with the solutions that you're using, but you may not understand how big a community we really are. So we are now 20,000 MSPs worldwide, managing over 400,000 SMB networks, 5 million endpoints, and 1 million mailboxes in our spam filtering solution. And what that really means to you is that there's a great community of people like you sharing information, working together on the same solution, and working to educate each other on what's happening in our industry. And so the big benefit of that stuff to you is we have events like this where we have people who are doing it, succeeding at it, and they're prepared to share that with you, which I think is a great thing that happens in our industry that maybe doesn't happen in a lot of industries. So really excited about today's content. So we have 3 gentlemen with us today that are long-term users of the solution, good friends, each and every one of them, and I'm really excited about having them here today. And so without going into some detailed questions and stuff like that, I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves. So if I could ask David to talk a little bit about his company, who he is, how long he's been around, and what's happening in his world. David?
Hello, it's David. Cybertech Engineering, we are a 20-year-old company. We moved in 2008 over to what I determined was I wanted to be like the electric company and get paid every month. Later to find that was going to be called the MSP industry in the IT world. Since then, we have specialized pretty much in county government and law. We do quite a few of both of those, run 3,500 to 4,000 seats. With that, we do add security, and our product that we deliver is called ROSIE, R-O-S-I-E. Turn over to James.
Good morning, it's James Davis. I'm the president of Navigate. We're a MSP based out of Louisville, Kentucky. We've been in business for 16 years, and about 10 years ago we made the switch from break fix to managed services, kind of when David did, kind of before it, we had a name for it. We service about 120 servers and 700 workstations. We price our stuff per user, and our security offering is built into that per user pricing. We got 8 people. We do a virtual office, so all of our techs work out of their houses. Our main focus is on small to medium businesses. Around 25 to 200 users is our sweet spot. Most of our business is done within 50 miles of Louisville. We do have a few outliers in Los Angeles and across the country. Usually those are remote offices of our customers here that are based in Louisville. We service all industries: construction, finance, manufacturing, retail. This year we're put a big push on construction industry with that starting to boom around here. We really don't have a special security offering that's priced separate except for our banking customers. We do have a separate thing that we price monthly for them to deal with the FDIC audits and the Sarbanes-Oxley audit prep and to remediate the findings in those. That's about it. I guess I'll turn it over to Tony.
Hi, everyone. This is Tony Hayden with Sabre Networks. We're located in the Raleigh area of North Carolina, right in the middle of the state. We cover mostly local, right in what we call the Triangle area, but we do go as far as Southern Virginia, South Carolina, and, some outliers, as was mentioned, in Canada and other places that tend to be remote offices of our clients here. We have about, I'm going to say 1,300 endpoints that we manage in some way or the other. And your sort of run-of-the-mill MSP. We do everything that the client might need IT-wise, from cabling and on up. And our security offering is more integrated rather than a separate product, although we will address that as a separate issue when the opportunity presents itself. But for the most part, our managed services package includes everything that we offer security-wise. Firewalls, managed firewalls, the antivirus, patch management, malware protection, all the typical things that you would expect. Let's see, we're about 5 people. We're virtual as well. We do have an office. We did have an office. We recently have decided to go back to the virtual office thing that we have done before. That's pretty much it for us. We just sort of try to integrate technology or the security technology in everything that we do, rather than approach it as a separate piece.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, guys. And I think, as everybody can see, we've got a great cross-section of expertise here, of people who have been doing things for a long time and different approaches to the market. So I'm looking forward to hearing about what's happening in their specific practices. So we hear an awful lot about security these days in the press and with the WannaCry and stuff like that recently, but certainly for the last couple of years it has been the #1 issue that MSPs are hearing from their end clients. And so tell me a little bit about what you're hearing from your end clients in terms of their fears and what they're concerned about as it relates to security. David?
Ours is, I think we should all take a moment and thank the NSA for their breach. That has brought us a lot of activity since the WannaCry virus a couple of weeks ago. Everybody who is anybody watching TV or any business owner wants to know their status of where they stand and are they vulnerable and what can we do? Is there anything they need? Which is their way of just offering it up and saying, bill me for something and make me feel more secure, something to put me at ease. That's what we're hearing pretty much across the board. The lawyers are the same way. The elected officials are the same way. Everybody wants to be more secure, which is an opportunity to sell them more services.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And because you're dealing with government, I'm certain that they are hyper-focused on that at the moment.
That is the first thing they talk about.
Great, because a few years ago, even as little as 3 or 4 years ago, I think security was maybe not one of the things that they were, hyper focused on, and so it certainly has changed over the past couple of years.
That is correct. And the scenario that we use, just like with James and Tony, we include security into our offering. We do our premium is a thing that we refer to as Rings of Rosie, and it's 9 different aspects that we look at based upon the model of the CISSPs, where we look at all pieces and parts from many different views, everything from physical to the application level. And with that, we do charge a premium, and they do not have a problem with it. After this WannaCry virus and the fear that there's 250 others coming behind it, they're willing to actually look at that. One of the things that we bring to the market with our customers is education. We believe the network, the software, and the human. And the education we teach quarterly with all of our customers. On the theme this quarter has obviously been cybersecurity and what they need to be putting into place and what they need to change as far as policies to reflect the latest fear in the wannabe viruses.
Yeah, and I think we're probably going to hear similar things from the others. But James, what are you hearing from your clients in terms of fears about security?
Yeah, most of the things I hear are with my clients. I don't have any government clients, so they're all public businesses or privately owned businesses. I get phone calls from people after they hear the news, watching CNN, Fox News, and seeing this stuff, asking if they're safe. And, we kind of go through a review with them of all the things that we as Navigate do for them to protect them, and then put the caveat on there that the only thing that we can't protect you from is your end users. We can train them, but you can't stop people from clicking on stuff they shouldn't have. And then we get a lot of, when we ask them the question about security and did you see that on the news, I get a lot of, it doesn't really apply to us. We're only 10 people or we're only 30 people. And so we have to go through that training session where, yes, 10 years ago, you probably weren't being targeted, but now it's not specific people or companies being targeted. It's just everybody. And there's things that we have to do to protect you. And I know if I was on the other end of this call, I'd like to hear, some of the services that we're offering and the different products that we're using. And we always sell it as a layered approach to security. And I'm sure all of my other panelists do the same. And we start with, some type of a cloud layer security, which we use Umbrella is the product that we use. And then, we have some physical hardware stuff, firewalls, which we use Meraki. And then we use web protection, which is on all the PCs. And we use the SolarWinds ARM MM. And managed antivirus, of course, is also SolarWinds. Our patch management is done with SolarWinds, and the patch management was the big key, knocking on wood here, that we haven't had any of our customers get the WannaCry virus. So SolarWinds really helped out with that, keeping up on the patches. And then we have email security. Most of our clients, I would say 98% of our clients are on Office 365 now, and we use Mail Protector for that. We use it for archiving and for encryption on some of our banking customers and stuff like that, and the filtering piece. Then quarterly, we try to do end-user training. I'll come in and do a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation with some examples of emails that look legitimate, that aren't. Show them how you put your mouse over the link and it shows you an address that's not. I show them, this is not an Amazon email, that kind of stuff. And if you can usually keep their attention for about 30 minutes and then they're done. So we keep that kind of short and try to do it once a quarter with some of our larger customers. We don't do it with the smaller ones. We kind of do one-on-one with that. And then the last, our last piece of the layer is for backup and, disaster recovery, because really that's the only defense and recovery option to some of these crypto stuff that's going around. And we are a Datto partner. We use Datto for that.
Great. Thanks for that, James. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the other guys are using as a technology stack. But Tony, what are you hearing from your clients in terms of fears and what's happening out there?
Well, for the last couple of years, the biggest concern we get from our clients, at least from a security perspective, has been ransomware. So even before WannaCry, we were always hearing concerns about ransomware. But now, certainly since WannaCry, just like I think it was David was saying, the phone starts ringing. Well, it did. People start asking questions, and one of the things that we do, and I don't want to just parrot what David and James said, but my business sounds almost exactly like James with the products being used and everything. But one of the things we did that Friday that the WannaCry started to break out, as soon as I heard about it, we communicate with our clients. And that's something I would recommend that people do is we emailed everyone and said, look, this looks like, we didn't know a lot at that point. It looked like it takes advantage of a vulnerability that was discovered a couple months ago. And guess what? Because you subscribe to our services, you have been patched now for 2 months. And so we don't expect any problems. Of course, internally, we actually went through and audited and made sure we did find a handful of machines those patches had failed, and we followed up and got it all done. So we were able to while I never made guarantees, I was able to put everyone at ease a little bit and make sure that they were aware that we were on top of it. Plus, got a little bit of, a little patting myself on the back and blowing our own horn a little bit, which I think is one of the important things you need to do as an MSP, because you tend to be in the background a lot. And it's easy for clients to not even know that you're doing anything. And so when something like this comes out, man, I never let a good crisis go to waste. So we have to get out there. We have to say, this is what we've done for you, and this is why. Again, I'm not trying to find some wood to knock on here, too. We haven't had anybody get it because we had everyone patched. So it's a good sales thing for us. Of course, we followed up the following week with, as we got new information. And then I ended up saying, hey, guess what, guys? Some of you don't have the more advanced security services on your firewall. Expect to hear from us about adding these more advanced security services on your firewall. And so we're starting to hit some of these clients and turn into a sales opportunity for us. And so it really is just a matter of doing what you're supposed to do with the products that you have and taking care of folks. But nothing says you can't leverage some of that fear and uncertainty and sell them the products that they really do need anyway. I'm not advocating selling something to someone they don't need, but things that they should have anyway. When it's on their radar for a short period of time because it's been on the news, that's the time that you can really get people to buy into it. When they quit hearing about it, when it leaves the news cycle for a while, then they start to forget about security again. So we find that it's just really important to be ready to hit them with what they need at that particular time. And so it hasn't changed. Your original question is what we're hearing about. It's still, people are still scared to death of ransomware. WannaCry just brought it to the forefront again and gave us an opportunity to get a little more traction on selling some more security services.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from most is that the ransomware type of attack has brought it down to the small business client who are now concerned, whereas before I think one of you mentioned that they were saying, is this really going to impact me? Who's going to try to do a DDoS attack on the small business and that kind of thing? But ransomware really brings it home for these guys. So tell me a little bit about security breaches at client locations, things that either have happened or that you've been able to protect them from, and if bad things did happen, how did you deal with the customers' issues? Maybe start with James.
Yeah, we've had a few of our clients get some variant of the crypto virus. Mainly before we started using our umbrella product is when we had those, and in 2 of those cases we had the Datto backup platform in there, and we're able to restore them from backup and get them back up and running that way. One of the cases, they were not a full-on, and our product is called Clearview, which is our full managed service product, that monthly reoccurring product that we sell. And that client wasn't on that yet. We were still in the beginning process when that happened. So, obviously that was great for us that they got crypto, and bad for them, but it helped us sell the client. And with that one, I think they ended up, it's been a while since we've had one of those. I think they ended up paying the ransom to get their data back. So, I mean, don't be embarrassed about customers having to do that. Sometimes they do it without your knowledge, or that's what we've dealt with. I think we've had 3 crypto variants with the breaches. Nothing with the WannaCry yet.
That's awesome. How about you, David?
We have seen, I will say that we haven't had any customer get hit with any of the later viruses. We did get hit with the version 1 of crypto when it first came out. We did have a couple customers that got hit. We were able to recover from backups that we had, with the exception of one. It actually hit a lady's laptop while it was offline, and we had to pretty much start that box all over again. The crypto side, we've been very lucky, knock on wood, that with the patch management from the RMM tool and the antivirus of choice, it has kept us clean. We have started to see in our industry the wire transfer requests. And if you haven't seen that, it is a cybersecurity scenario, but it is not an encrypto infection, where the executive is sending an email request to someone in accounts payable, and it looks like a valid email from the source, and requesting a wire transfer for some emergency reason, and without the end user education, those things will get through. So like I mentioned earlier, one of our big things is making sure the education of the end user is there so that they're able to stop that kind of stuff, because that is becoming rampant in the state and county governments right now.
For sure, and I'm hearing that from all over the world. So, Tony, how about your customers?
Yeah, they're more of the same, really. We are seeing some of those wire transfer, phishing scams. We haven't had anyone to do it that I can think of. We have over the years had about, I think we're up to 6 now, incidences of one of the crypto variants. I can't remember which one. In 3 of those instances, they were, fully protected by our systems, and we've just restored them from backup. And the other 3, they were not under our umbrella, which I'm glad to say. I think in 2 of those cases, they paid the ransom. In the 3rd case, it was just a workstation, and they didn't much care what was on it. So it hasn't, and you're right, I think it was you, Kelly, that said this has brought it, this whole ransomware phenomenon has brought security home to folks who thought they didn't have to worry about that before. We all know they did anyway, but it seems like everybody knows somebody who got hit with ransomware, and they're scared it's going to happen to them. So it's a nice little foot in the door for us, and a way to help sell services and our products. Of course, on the back end of that, we have to make sure that we can uphold our part of it.
For sure, for sure. So I'm going to change gears a little bit here and start talking a little bit about how you approach customers and how do you talk to customers about your security offerings and to address some of their fears. So how do you initiate security discussions with both existing and new clients? How much detail do you go into when you try to address their fears in terms of the solution stack? And do you try to translate those things into managing risk and how comfortable they are with risk and that kind of thing? And maybe we'll start with Tony, just because, it's tough to always go last on these questions because you kind of do a lot of, yeah, me too. So go first, Tony.
So with our existing clients, it depends. It depends on where we are in the news cycle. When things, are really being talked about with WannaCry, they were asking us. And so that gets the conversation started. Otherwise, we're having to initiate it. We're having to make sure that we are renewing, firewall services, and that we're, keeping them up to date on what we're doing and that we're watching them. One interesting thing is just last week, we got a client, a potential client, contacted us out of the blue. So I go to talk to them, and one of my first questions is, what brings us here? What is it you're not happy about with your current IT that has brought us here to this point? And this was a law firm. Funny we should mention that. And the first thing she said, one of the attorneys, she said, we don't feel our current provider is keeping us secure. And then, we went into a lot of details about that. And so, and she did mention that the WannaCry thing actually brought that to the forefront. It had been sort of stewing in the back of their minds. They were worried. They didn't know their security position, if they were protected or not, and this just brought it up. So here's a potential client. We haven't closed that yet, but if we do, it'll be directly because of security services that we can offer a fear that they have. And so it comes both ways. We initiate the conversation usually with our existing clients until something big hits, but also they come to us as well. So it goes both ways.
Okay, great. How about you, David?
Our scenario is a lot of our guys are aware of aware that there is an issue out there. We've adopted NIST as a standard. So one of the big things we do in the beginning is we go into the customer and we classify the level of importance of their application, their database, whatever is the most important asset or application in the building. And then we ask them a simple question. If it's a law firm of 20 people and we ask them, tabs is what you guys use, what's it going to cost you guys if that's down for a day or 2 days? What's the financial impact? And once we get them thinking about how much that would cost for the attorneys to stand around doing nothing, then they're more likely to be able to understand the value of having the applications or the security put in place to keep that from happening. So we try to turn it from a fear factor to a risk mitigation factor with a financial value on top of it. And most of them are aware if they invite us into the room, there's going to be a financial cost before it's over. I mean, I don't think there's a business owner out there that believes that as an MSP, we should come in, take away their anguish or pain that they feel for free. And then it just becomes the level at which you're able to secure them and what level you're able to make sure that they do not get hit by something like the WannaCry virus or whatever's next, the ambrosia or whatever is the next one coming out.
Right. Okay, James, what are you? How are you initiating security discussions and managing risk?
Well, with our existing customers, they either have we don't have different packages. It's all or nothing with our per user pricing. So we're pretty much building that all in to where they have to do it. With new customers, when we go in and we do kind of a high-level audit of their systems, if we find anything glaring, I'll bring that up in the discussion with the client. Looking at, you don't have AV, and I know it's crazy that we still run into those, that they don't even have antivirus, and it's out of date or something like that. And then that starts the discussion of, that's one level of protection. Now let's talk about all the other levels and let's check and see if you have those levels of protection. We may be a little behind. One of the things that we may be a little behind is we don't use an assessment tool. It's all kind of a manual process that we've built, our own process for investigating new networks and stuff like that. And I'm definitely have been looking at them. I know a lot of people who use like rapid fire and those, but getting the executives to listen to you, like Tony said, it's best to start off with a discussion of, what's important to you. Is it email? Is that important to you? Do you have an application that you're using that's the most important? And when that's down, what does that cost you? And I think a lot of executives out there in business don't think that way about IT. It's come, like David said, it's just like the electric company. They just expect it to work, and they don't think about the number of what it would cost them if they were down. And it's something as simple as email. Like I have a lot of construction industry clients, and if they're bidding on big government jobs and stuff like that, there's deadlines, and if email's down and they miss that deadline, they don't get that job because they couldn't submit their bid or ask questions about the bid. And I say, put a number on that. And, most of them can't put a number on it, and you kind of help them through that process of putting a number on it. Well, now you've got 5 people sitting here not being able to do anything. Is that costing you money? And once they realize that there's significant dollars involved, they start to really think about security and look at our costs compared to that and think, wow, this is just a no-brainer.
Yeah, definitely translating it into something that they can relate to in terms of lost revenue and things like, or production, is certainly something most companies can grasp. So just before we go on to the next questions, I just wanted a note to the attendees There is a panel for questions, and we're going to try and leave about 50 minutes at the end to answer your questions, and I know there's a couple already. So the last 50 minutes, I'm going to try and ask your questions to these guys. So feel free as we go through to pound some stuff in there, and we will try to address them in the last 50 minutes of the webinar. So David, you talked about NIST, and so my next question is really around compliances and the things that your clients need to address or need to be compliant with, things like HIPAA and PCI and NIST and those kinds of things. So how do you manage the assessment and remediation and those kinds when you actually go in and compare against what compliances they need?
Yes, the HIPAA is a big one, and I would throw a plug out there for the rapid fire tools. It can do a very quick job of assessments. We use that. We also have some other products that we use that are provided by our state entities that we look at. Most of those are NIST. We have to submit reporting on those kind of devices. And what is our process? What are we monitoring? What are we categorizing? What are we, going through the select, implement, and move around the circle with a lot of our vendors. HIPAA is a big thing for us because in a lot of our courtroom scenarios, the documents for an individual trial will have medical records. So we have to comply with all HIPAA in any of the law scenarios that we're having to play out. That's been pretty good. We've used some breach software. We've used the product looking for PI, and forgive me, right now I'm not sure what the name of that is with you guys. It's had a couple name changes, but it'll go out there and look for the credit card, what is it called?
Risk intelligence.
Risk intelligence this time.
Yep.
We've actually turned that on and used that to identify some stuff, and it has found a lot of information in places that we did not suspect that data should be of any value. We have used that, but one of the things that I think is most important is we stay on top of that every quarter. It's no good to you or to the customer if you go in and try to hit them for security once a year. This is something that is an ever-changing Pandora's box, that every time that sucker gets opened, something new comes out of it. So you have to stay in front of the customer with newsletters, with emails, with reports, and say, hey, this is what's happening in the market. This is what's going on. We're protected, or we're doing updates this weekend to prevent this from happening. You need to stay in front of them more than just whenever the CBS News says that there's a virus problem out there.
For
but
sure.
I would say the big thing is you have to stay consistent with the customer on how you're moving them to a more secure platform.
Perfect. Okay, that makes complete sense to me. How about you, Tony?
So with our client base, as far as compliance, the big ones are HIPAA and PCI. And so, of course, we, as you would expect, assist them with any audits that occur, the yearly forms and audits that have to be done, and any sort of remediation that we have to do to make sure that we meet all of these compliances. So they're important. Nobody likes to do them. They're a pain in the rear end. They're boring, but they are important. These folks have to do them. So it's an important piece of what we do, and we have to do it routinely. Like David said, we have to be on this stuff routinely. Don't just wait until it's time for that yearly form, and then you have to scramble to try and get things caught up, cleaned up, neatened up. Stay on top of it at least quarterly, I would agree.
Okay, great. James, are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And since they talked about HIPAA and PCI, we have those also that we deal with. One of the things they didn't discuss was the FDIC with our banking industry customers that we have to deal with. And with those, a lot of it is with the documentation. The FDIC doesn't, they want to see you document something and then do it. So you have to perform all the tasks, but you also have to document that you performed all the tasks. And like I said, and when I opened up, that's a separate line item on our monthly contract for the banking industry. We encourage our clients, because the way we sell ourselves as their virtual IT department, or, we are a part of your company, treat us like that. On those customers, we encourage them to use a third party, an outside, it may be an MSP, to do a external audit and an assessment of their network before these audits happen. And then included in our pricing, we tell them, anything that we find or they find, we will remediate that, and that's part of your contract. We use a company called Octopi, which, Kelly, you should be familiar with, and maybe everybody knows Ian at Security.
Yes, certainly one of our security guys, Ian Trump, owned an MSP that was doing a lot of that stuff, and he's now a security lead in the industry, so certainly knows his stuff as it relates to that. That's interesting that you use a third party to help with auditing and things like that. How often do you find they come in and identify things for you to address? Is that a regular thing, or is that?
We usually do it once a year. We have an external company come in and do it, and I'd say just about every year they find some minor stuff. There's always something minor they find. Most of the major stuff is fixed after the first couple of years of going through that, and then the FDIC audit itself is not just in IT security, it's in security, across the board for the bank. And they find something every time because that's their job. They get paid to come in there and sit down and find stuff. And usually their findings are with, yes, you did this, but you didn't document it.
Right.
And then we have to create a new policy for them saying, this is what's happening, and we're checking it this often, and then we log that we have checked it when we're supposed to.
Right. Very interesting. Okay. So we're going to get to some audience questions in 5 or 10 minutes. I've got just 2 last ones to talk to you about. So I often hear from MSPs that say they go in and they make recommendations to change hardware or implement new software levels or layered security, and their clients sometimes just say, no, I'm not interested in spending that money. So when it comes to security, that can open up risk to you as a business as well as to the customer. So what do you do when your client declines one of your security recommendations? David?
We've had that only once with a smaller law firm that we made some suggestions, and they felt that that was a risk that they would not face. And so we asked them to sign off, and we put about a paragraph together of basically stating what we've informed them, what we've come to the conclusion of, and that if they sign this document, then we were no longer held liable in that risk. And, I told them it was, this is more of a scary thing for them than me, because the risk mitigation just walked out the door and I'm no longer responsible. But let them know that you're stepping back, and if the train wreck happens, you're just going to be on the sidelines going, I'll help you pick up the pieces, but this could have been prevented. But I can say in 30 years of being in this business, I've only had one of those. And but that's something you need to make sure you get in writing if they choose, not to do backups, or they not to do patching, or whatever the case may be, or they don't want to go underneath a HIPAA audit. Make sure that that's in writing, or else you'll turn into that MSP up in Washington with Hillary stuff and they blame each other.
Right. Well, it sounds like, you've been very fortunate not to have to deal with that an awful lot. What about you, James?
I haven't dealt with that very much myself. Every once in a while, we'll get that in the beginning stages of when we first meet a customer, and we're, telling them this is what the services we offer, and these are the things that we're going to ask you to do as a project before you come on board our managed service offering. And then as we go over, a year or two, and we're making recommendations, it's hard to get people just to forklift everything and put what you want in there. If we see that they're doing a lot of pushback and on, say I want to put a new firewall in and, put the advanced security features on it, and they push back, they don't stay a customer long. And I know that's hard to do, to turn down business and stuff. And, I usually approach it with the customer as in, maybe we're not a good fit for you, because let me help you understand why I want you to spend this money here. And I usually try to help them with their budgets and show them that, hey, we have to put some money in there for this type of stuff, and maybe we can take some money out somewhere else to help cover those costs. But we try to pick and choose our customers that are going to take our recommendations, and if they're not, they're just going to be a headache, and my margins are going to go way down, because I'm going to be over there fixing things all the time, because we're kind of a all-you-can-eat type MSP.
Right. Okay. Again, sounds like you're in a fortunate situation. How about you, Tony? Are you there too?
Yeah, we've had a couple of situations that I can think of over the years. One was a healthcare practice that didn't want to bother with passwords, and as crazy as that sounds. And so we did what David said. We said, okay, we didn't have to go that far, as David said, but we told him, I said, okay, if you really want to do this, we're going to send over a form that says we have warned you, and we'll need you to sign off on it. And I guess that made them think about it a little bit more, and that request to not have passwords went away. And then one that is more recent, this was a client that the day we took them over didn't have any backup, and they had a bunch of servers. Not one thing was being backed up, and so that was our recommendation right at the top of our list. Long story short, 9 months later, they still had not implemented any kind of backups despite multiple proposals and all that. That was among the reasons we did end up firing them. They pretty much would not do or listen to anything we said, and it became a kind of an adversarial type situation. But so we did have to fire them, and it is tough to do when you're put in that situation. But sometimes you have to take that step so that you can sleep better at night. I woke up every morning wondering if one of those servers had died, and we had no way of recovering anything. You don't want to be in that situation very long. If they're not going to care about it, you can't really care about it either.
Yep, that's
interesting you say that, Tony. That's a hard lesson to learn. And as I guess I call myself an old school MSP because we've been doing it so long, and I'm sure David would say the same thing of sometimes you have to let business go. If they're just not going to do it, it's hard to fire a customer and give up that revenue, but in the long run, it's probably saving you money.
Yeah, not all business is good business, as they say.
That I would attest to that. And what I have found, the morale of your employees, because if they're a bad customer, they're a bad customer. Your employees don't like going with them. And if they're not willing to pay the bill, chances are your front desk or whoever's sending the bill is having a hard time getting paid. And so in almost every scenario where we have fired a customer, the employees that you work with on a day-to-day basis will respect you more for getting rid of that kind of thorn in everybody's butt.
Yeah.
But it is, sometimes if that contract has a comma in it and you're pitching away $3 or $4 grand a month, make sure you're being driven by the business and not driven by your checkbook.
David, I think you must be spying on our office because you just described that situation to me.
I tell you what, it happens more and more, and I've had to look at our boss and say, hey, I'm going to dump this customer, and they know what the revenue is coming off that customer, and I'm like, I'm running out of techs that want to go out there and do a good job because it's just a bad company to go visit. And yeah, don't be afraid to turn that down, because guess what? Your competitor will pick them up, and then they get the joy of dealing with them. So
great advice, guys. Okay, I'm going to open up to a couple of audience questions here. One specifically targeted at you, James. I think they were wondering about a little bit more detail about your umbrella solution that you're using. What is it, and you know, how can they get more information on it?
Well, it seems like every time I find a good solution, Cisco buys it, and then it starts to not be so good anymore.
That was the question. Is this Cisco umbrella you're talking about?
It is Cisco umbrella that I'm talking about, and it's basically, you know, it's a DNS filter in the cloud that you know, we route all traffic through. The nice thing about the umbrella is you can actually have remote clients, and you can put this on their laptop, so it's actually working when they're not behind the network and stuff like that. I do know that Webroot is stepping into this game, and they don't have the remote client yet, but I know it's coming. And I'd say the Cisco comment because of they bought Meraki too, and we're a big Meraki partner. So, but Umbrella's big thing with CryptoLocker is if the client downloads the package, it won't let the package go out and download the encryption part, and it supposedly blocks that part of it. So,
okay, awesome. All right, so a couple of you mentioned user education as a big part of your offering, and so the question is, a little bit more detail about what do you teach them? Is it mandatory, and how do you how do you make sure that it's the level that people can understand? Maybe we'll start with Tony, because I don't think he mentioned it. Do you do user training?
Probably not as much as we should. A lot of our training basically amounts to, well, when we onboard a client, we will go in and do some rudimentary training, but most of our training after that amounts to periodic information that we send out, you know, writing a blog article, sending that out, sending out links to important information, and that sort of thing. It is something we should do a better job of with the continuing education with the client. It really is important, and we actually depend on our contacts in those companies to disseminate a lot of that information. That probably is not the best way to do it, but you know, I'm a big fan of it. It's just not something that we have set that we've, you know, to develop the infrastructure to handle and have any sort of a routine of going out and doing client education.
Okay, perfect. James, you want to just update us on user training and then what you mentioned?
I would say I'm probably in the same boat as Tony. You know, I'd love to do it more, and finding the staff and time to do it is tough. We're going to have to learn how to charge for that more, and so we can maybe dedicate someone to do that. There are clients that I have, especially the ones that fall under the FDIC audits and stuff like that. Training is required, so we have to do it. So it forces us to schedule, you know, a 30-minute session once every quarter out there to do those trainings. And basically, I just put a little PowerPoint presentation that, you know, has a few slides about some stories out there of some hacks. And, you know, you try to put a couple of funny ones in there to keep people entertained. And then some sample emails of bad emails. And then at the end, I usually have a couple of emails that are good and have them look at them and say, hey, is this a good email or not? You know, can you tell? And that kind of stuff. And like I said, they last about 30 minutes long. But I wish I could do it more, like Tony said. There's probably, you know, 15, 20 customers I've never done it for that we have that I'd love to get out there and do, but finding the time is tough.
Yep, understand that completely, especially if it's not something specifically, you know, on the revenue line. How about you, David?
We are the opposite. We attack education as one of the things that we sell that differentiates us between some of our competitors. Every quarter there is a lunch and learn training at our customer sites. Up till about March, we throw this out. We put a list of about 5 to 6 items on there, and it could be, you know, the top 10 things you need to know about Microsoft Outlook, or advanced Excel, whatever makes sense. Again, going back to our original interview of what is the most important asset that the company has. And if it's, dealing with spreadsheets or your end user staff not knowing how to be productive in Outlook, we target those, and every quarter we do end user training for every customer. That is a full-time role of keeping that going. But I can say that we develop a very sticky relationship with the customer. And the thing with the other MSPs out there, the biggest sales force you can have are those end users, because if you do those kind of things for the end user, when they quit that job and they go to another company and that IT sucks, they're going to carry your name in front. These guys will do the job and they'll educate us on how to do the job better.
Yep.
And that sales stuff is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, no, I hear that from lots, but I also think most or lots of MSPs are in the same boat as James and Tony, where it's hard to find the time. But it's great to hear that you're focusing in on that quite so strongly. So
maybe we could get our RMM provider to put some short training things together for us, and all we have to do is basically download it and go out there and talk about it. That'd be great.
White label it.
It's a great segue into one of our upcoming webinars that we're going to do something on user training. So stay tuned on that, James. So we're getting up close to the end of the hour. So I'm going to ask one last question. If you can just give me the 1-minute version of what advice would you give to an MSP that's just getting into using security as a sales tool and is maybe not feeling completely comfortable with their grasp on all the security things that are out there? What's your number one advice for them to succeed in that? And we'll start with Tony.
Well, I would say the same thing that I really tell my clients, is that it's amazing how secure you can be by just doing very basic and easy to understand things. I think someone already mentioned that security is a layered approach, but all of those layers are pretty easy to understand. You've got antivirus and patch management and email security and firewalls and gateway antivirus. All of this is stuff that the MSP should understand and should have a package that they can deliver and sell to their clients. But as you see from the things I named, they're really not that difficult. You don't have to be an IT security expert. You just have to do a little bit of homework, put a package together, find the products that you like, price it, and have it ready. If you're going to do it as a separate thing, or if you're going to enclose it, you have to at least know what your costs are going to be if you're going to include that into your base package. So it's not rocket science. You don't have to be you don't have to be Ian or somebody who lives and breathes IT security 40 hours a day, right? You just have to be somebody who understands the products and the tools that are available and can package it in a way the client can understand.
Great advice. Great advice. James, how about you?
One of the things that I try to do is know my audience and who I'm sitting across the table from. If they have some IT staff on, who I'm talking to, whether it's IT or executive level. I try not to sell fear, and maybe I do it because I'm smiling when I'm saying it, but you're really selling fear. There's bad things that are going to happen to your network if you don't do these things, and it's not specific to any industry anymore or any size company anymore. It's everybody. And normally when we go into first sell a customer, they will have a lot of these things in place, and I try to, applaud them for that. I'm like, look, you got this is good, and this is good, and then go into the things that, hey, but if we did this, this, and this, you'd be even more secure. But I try not to go in selling the world's coming to an end, even though it might be.
Right. No, great advice. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Neal.
One thing I would say is, echoing back what Jim was saying there, get to know your customer, the eyes and the ears that you have out there in the field, and working with them. If they see something that's suspicious, Remember, 0 days out there, the AV products or whatever you have, there are things that are going to get through. But if you work well with them or they have some security, knowing that you're there to protect them, that's what they want. So get to know your customer. And back to, again, echoing what Jim said, he's got all the right answers. Pick your niche and know everything about the application and what's going on in that industry, so that you are the perceived expert in their eyes. Focus on that. I mean, there's too many attacks going worldwide to, we can't all be Ian. So you need to concentrate on what your niche of that technological pie is and be the best that you can be for your customers.
Great advice. All right, so that takes us to the end of the question part. I want to thank all three of you for a spectacular information sharing. As I say, one of the unique things about this industry is people like you are willing to share their expertise and knowledge with the other people in the industry, and I think it is what makes us unique. It is what makes it a fun industry to be in, and I want to thank each and every one of you for your expertise, your experience, and the way that you're prepared to share it. Just in terms of wrapping up, so we heard some information about some products out there. So just a quick review of some of the things that SolarWinds MSP can offer you. We certainly have MSP Manager, which is a ticketing / PSA system. We've got a great backup tool, which is an alternative to some of the ones we heard today on the phone. We've got a standalone remote control. We've got mail security and risk intelligence, which I think we heard David talked about was also part of the solution. And then we also have, a couple of RMM solutions, one in the cloud and one on premise, which has all of those tools integrated into it. So a great service suite for you to offer not only managed services, but also layered security. And we're going to talk about the next monthly webinar and how we're going to try to talk about that and address that in the next webinar. And then, one of the big benefits of having SolarWinds as a corporate partner is that there's a whole bunch of enterprise tools that they offer. And so if you're looking at clients that are larger and still and are looking for standalone solutions for specific problems, there's a whole host of that technology that's available to you. So, as the largest software solution provider to this space, we cover the gambit from the small MSP right up to the largest enterprise. So that's kind of our overall value proposition. We also have some of the best MSP programs out there. So whether it's business support in helping you do that with events like this, resources like marketing material and playbooks and those kinds of things, or technical support, whether product training, community platforms, and our tech support. We're here to help you build your business and take advantage of that. That stuff is there for you. In terms of what we're doing next, and we heard a lot today about layered security. So our Hero Series webinars, they happen once a month. It's all about industry and how to improve your MSP practice. It's the last Tuesday of each month. It's open to all solution providers, so you don't have to be a customer of SolarWinds to take part of this. So if you have other people you're dealing with and you want to share the invite to them, absolutely, they're welcome to come. We base them on a quarterly theme. This quarter's theme was security. So the first one was last month. We had Steve Ruckovitz talk about a new service that he's using to train MSPs to switch over to be an MSSP. We've had today's sharing of what other MSPs are doing to help with their customers as it relates to security, to give you some real-world experience. And then next month, we're going to have a presentation from our very own Eric Anthony, who manages our sales engineers team. He's been in MSP, was for a number of years, speaks all over North America about the MSP practice and the things you're going to do, understands our technology very, very well. And so he's going to talk about understanding layered security and how to use it to protect your clients. And that's going to be June 27th at 11 o'clock. We will send out a recording of this webinar to all of you, and so you'll be able to click a link in there to sign up for that webinar. So we hope to see you when we're there on the 27th of June. And I hope you found today's information helpful, and we'll be doing these monthly webinars for the rest of the year at least. And so, stay tuned for some other great content that we've got planned. I kind of cryptically mentioned that we've got something on user training coming up, so we're going to be joined by another company that is an outsourced user training type of solution, and so he's going to share some industry stuff and some ways for you to be able to do this without sending your guys out and those things like that. And so we think being part of this community is a competitive advantage. We think this is how MSPs learn to be better MSPs, and we're committed to working to try and help you do that. And with that, I know we're a minute over. I just want to say thank you once again to David, James, and Tony. Thank you very much for your insights. And with that, I'll sign off and look forward to seeing you next month. Have a great day.